It's interesting how all the anti-woke advocates just kind of disappear in regards to like Final Fantasy VII-R, right? There were so many people who were trying to accuse Xenoblade of being censored, of these Square Enix games of being censored, trying to say that like, oh, Square Enix has this ethics board that like demands that games be heavily censored, right? We saw this, we saw them try to pull this stunt, we saw them try to like push this narrative that like Japan is being subverted from the inside. Like we saw them pushing these conspiracies, and what happened, right? None of it was true at any point. It was a complete and total farce, right? Right from the get go. Even when it comes like the localization issues that they bring up, like it's always a non-issue. And I think like upon seeing Final Fantasy VII-R, seeing Tifa's glorious chest in like with PS5 graphics, that kind of puts an end to all of that, right? There is no censorship going on. It's a conspiracy. Like it's not real. Okay, it's not that real. It's not a big deal. But like the issue now, I think the big thing to take account for this, to take into account when discussing these things going forward is that like it's interesting, isn't it? How Nintendo is always the target for both woke and anti-woke controversies, while PlayStation always gets off scot-free, no matter what happens. Like, where are the people complaining about the skin on Tifa, right? Because we saw nothing but complaints about the skin on Pyra and Mithra, right? We saw nothing but complaints about that, right? We saw nothing but complaints about like um certain Nintendo games, right? Fire Emblem, right? Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Like we saw people like on both sides try to say that like these games were over sexualized, right? We saw people come out over and under sexualized, right? We saw people like trying to like pretend Nintendo was simultaneously like being too fan servicey and not fan servicey enough, right? Just look at Fire Emblem Awakening, right? You have Spurgs like Raging Golden Eagle trying to say it's too censored, right? That it's not sexual enough, and then you have other people saying that like the sexualization it does have ruins the entire experience, and you'll see people complaining about that even to this day, long after the game has been out of print and after it's gotten several sequels, right? Like, and they'll still tell you that they're boycotting the game even though that that it's boycotting the series, even though that like the issue was never that big of a deal to begin with, right? If you were really a Fire Emblem fan, you would still be supporting the franchise, like regardless of these decisions, right? Like, and again, we haven't. I don't trust people who just complain about like woke or anti woke subjects, right? But with Final Fantasy VII-R, like this is an example of something that really should drudge up controversy, because if this game is more sexualized than Final Fantasy VII-R, that proves that Final Fantasy VII-R was censored, right? And if that's true, then why wasn't there more of a controversy about Final Fantasy VII-R when it came out, right? Why weren't more people speaking up about how terrible the game was? And the reality is, the censorship doesn't matter, right? The sexualization of the characters don't matter, right? Whatever happens, it's okay because it's on PlayStation and it's on PC and it's not on that like evil Nintendo platform. That's the real problem. Nintendo is the one behind everything, right? Nintendo has been like working behind the scenes to like censor all these characters, but still keeping in like all the weird stuff for woke audiences, right? Like they're bending over backwards to like annoy everyone on both sides of the political aisle. They're ruining all these classic franchises. It was everything Square could have done, right, to escape them in the 90s, right? Like if it wasn't for Sony swooping in and saving them with Final Fantasy VII, like Final Fantasy wouldn't have lasted this long under Nintendo's guidance. Like that is legit the narrative that we see from these people, right? They refuse to acknowledge that they are primarily motivated by a contempt for Nintendo and an irrational lust, a longing for other companies, right? An obsession with defending and worshiping PlayStation, Xbox, and their subsidiaries, right? The companies that just blindly support them no matter what, right? That is the mindset of the typical gamer is that Nintendo is casual kitty trash, and PlayStation is where you go where you want to see titties. Like this has been like the narrative since the 90s, right? Just look at the Honeybee Inn, right? Just look at what they did with Final Fantasy 7R. Look how much like Final Fantasy 7 like emphasized the waifu stuff to begin with, right? That was never a thing in 6, right? You actually had dynamic, interesting female characters in 6, right? Like you had like romances between characters, but they didn't define the entire plot the way that like Cloud's relationship with Tifa and Aerith kind of defined the entire plot, right? To this day, people still argue about whether Cloud really loved Tifa or Aerith. Tifa. Like the shipping aspect of Final Fantasy VII is like kind of an instrumental part of its identity. It's an important part of its power fantasy. It's an important part of like why it's endured so long, and that is kind of lame, honestly. Like, why can we not address the fact that like Final Fantasy regressed with 7? Why can we not regress that Final? Why can we not acknowledge that Final Fantasy regressed upon leaving Nintendo hardware? Why can we not acknowledge like the bankruptcy of SquareSoft in the 90s, right? Like, how can we not like? Why can we not acknowledge like this company and just everything they've done over the years, how bad it all is, how they haven't put out anything legitimately good since like Dragon Quest 11, I think is the last time. Even Dragon Quest 11 has problems, but like I still like it for what it is. Um, like this company is just has so many more problems than like the size of their female characters' chests, but the way it sounds, the way it looks, that's all anybody cares about. That's all anybody thinks about. That's all anybody plays the games for, is just seeing Eris and Tifa running towards you in slow motion with the jiggle physics and like in their bikinis, right? Like that is what the audience wants because they'll never have that in real life, right? For someone like me who has those kind of situations all the time, it's not really it's not really that desirable, right? Like for me, it's not appealing. Like I'm not gonna buy a PS5 and I'm not gonna buy a PS5 or an Xbox Series X or a gaming PC for like Tifa and a bikini. Okay, like it's just not gonna happen. Okay, I need to have a good video game. I need to have like this, and this. Okay, like I need like an actually good video game on a Nintendo console. And Final Fantasy isn't going to deliver that to me. Final Fantasy doesn't understand what makes a video game great. And as a result of that, it is shaping up to be a complete failure.